Hey, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast hosted by two comedians who love the Cubs but do not live in Chicago. I am one of them. My name is Adam Mamawala, and the other one is Kevin McCaffrey. He's not here right now. He is driving somewhere. I believe he's somewhere between Pittsburgh and Chicago, so very Cubsy of him to be traveling between those two cities. I am currently in my childhood bedroom, not to brag. I am back in New Jersey for the holidays, and if you're listening to this, it is Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. Some of you may be in your childhood homes, and I hope you have a nice Thanksgiving. I really do. And you know what? If you don't, maybe listen to a Cubs podcast towards the end of November with nothing going on to give yourself a brief respite from people arguing about politics, as tends to be the case with a lot of Thanksgivings in these trying times that we're living in. So just going to be me today. It's not going to be a super long episode. Just going to keep it fairly brief, but in the spirit of the season and not to be too corny, this is a giving thanks episode, giving thanks to the Cubs for bringing us joy, sometimes bringing us great agony as we learn towards the end of the season, but also to you guys. Thank you so much to all of you who listen to us, who tweet back and forth with us, even if it's disagreeing with things that we may have said. But we really appreciate that. I know, just speaking for myself, it's been really cool to be able to talk about this team that I love so much in a way that people actually engage with, because one of the things that Kevin and I talked about when we first started this podcast was like, we both have been so obsessed with the Cubs for so long without really an outlet to express that. Like, we would both try to tweet things or post statuses from our individual accounts that were Cubs specific, and 99% of the people that we're friends with or who are fans of ours were like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. So honestly, it's been really cool over the past couple of years to be able to meet a lot of you guys, mostly digitally, but sometimes in person, and engage with you and just talk about this team that we love so much. And it's been really cool, and we hope to keep it going even during these very dark times where there is literally nothing going on. Although some personal news, some of you may have seen us tweet this from the Away Games account, which, as you already know, is at awaygamespod on Twitter and Instagram. Kevin and I bought tickets to go to London. We have not made any plans as far as like actually traveling there, where we're going to say any of that. But we were like, you know what? This is a very unique opportunity. I've never been to London. It's always been a place that I've wanted to go. Kevin as well. I think he and his brother and his wife Jamie are going to go out there. And we have no plans whatsoever, but we have procured tickets for both games. And I woke up at 5 a.m. to get those tickets. A friend of mine who's a big Yankees fan had gone out last year for the Yankees-Red Sox games, and she was on some sort of email list about the pre-sale and kept forwarding that to me. So thank you to Amanda, if you are listening. But yeah, we got some tickets. They weren't like insanely expensive. I think, they were the cheaper seats, and they came out to like, I assume what would equivalent to like maybe $80 or $90. So theoretically, barring any major life-changing events between now and then, Kevin and I will be at the ultimate away game or away games in London next year, explaining baseball to British people. It's going to be great. Okay, where to go from here? So the thing about the Cubs that I love, and just about baseball in general, is that when you've been following this team for long enough, you start to associate certain years with certain times in your life. Like for me, 2003, I distinctly remember that I was a junior in high school during that time, and what that time in my life was like, what that team meant to me as a result of where I was at in my life. And the same with 1998. That was after I just moved from Illinois to New Jersey, and becoming obsessed with the Cubs that year was kind of a way for me to like stay connected to a place that I missed and a place that I had just left. And this year, this was a very difficult year for me personally, and it's not something that we've talked about on the podcast. It's not something that I've actually talked about publicly at all, but because of the fact that I feel like this is a very close-knit community, and I know you guys pretty well, I'm going to share a little bit of this with you, because I needed the Cubs more this year than any year in my life. It was particularly strange because what was happening with me was also kind of happening with Ben Zobrist at the same time, albeit under very different circumstances, and in his case, a lot more public circumstances. But 2019 was a year for me in which my marriage ended. I was separated from my wife starting around like May, and then fully separated, moved out by the end of June, and nothing's official, but we've signed papers, and it's basically in New York City. There's a bit of a waiting period, so for all intents and purposes, it's done. But the point is, without getting into too much personal stuff, I was at a point earlier this year where nothing in my life was what I thought it was going to be. And when you're at a point like that, you need some normalcy and you need some consistency, and you have to search for things that are going to give you that. And that's what the Cubs were for me this year. And so it's really interesting that, I think for the average Cubs fan, in 10 years, if I say, yeah, what was 2019 like? If you remember it, you're going to say like, oh yeah, that was that year that, it was kind of up and down, and then they kind of flamed out towards the end. I think that this year for me, despite how it ended for the Cubs, will probably go down as one of the most important years that I watched baseball in my life, because it was an opportunity for me for 3 hours a day when everything was in complete chaos in my life to be able to have that normalcy and to watch that team. And there are specific times and specific moments during points in my life where things were getting really awful, where things just happened that I was like, I really needed that in that moment. Like one of the first weekends that I was home staying with my parents while we were separated, it was miserable, and I was really having a hard time. And that was the weekend of the Cubs sweeping the Cardinals, and more specifically the Taylor Davis Grand Slam. And there was a weekend later that month where a similar thing was happening. That was the weekend of the Contreras walk-off in 15 innings against the Brewers. And a sweep of the Brewers in Chicago. And I don't even know how to express it properly, but I imagine that some of you who are listening to this or who follow us on Twitter, you know what I'm talking about. We've all been through difficult personal situations. I think for me, the thing that I've learned more than anything is that at any given moment, you really have no idea what anybody else is going through. And I think when you go through something traumatic in your personal life, whether it's a relationship or a marriage ending, whether it's a death or a tragedy of some sort, I think it teaches you an empathy that you maybe weren't able to get in touch with before. And so I have to imagine that for some of you who love the Cubs as much as we do, that the Cubs have been that for you at various points in your life. And I'm very appreciative of this team and of everything around this team, of this podcast, of being able to talk to you guys. There were plenty of times where I was tweeting random bullshit about the Cubs this year, where simultaneously I was, emailing a divorce lawyer, or figuring out where the hell I was going to live, or just trying to handle really serious stuff that was going on. And the Cubs, I'm so grateful that if this had to happen, it happened during baseball season, because God help me if it was happening now and I didn't have that to look forward to almost every day. So this is my way of saying thank you to the Cubs. Thank you to you guys for listening, for, like I said, tweeting back and forth with us, for having fun with us, for letting us be idiots about the Cubs, for following all of our journeys. The year did not end as we had hoped for the Cubs. This year certainly did not go as I had hoped for myself. But you know what? Like baseball, there's always next year. There's going to always be a next year for me. There's always next year for this team. Hopefully, Jarrell Cotton is not the biggest acquisition that we have this year. But that's going to be it for this episode. So, short way of saying thank you guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your families. Hope everybody has safe travels, all of that stuff. And we will talk to you next week. Later.